He's a man who walks in two worlds. He is a degree civil and structural engineer from New Mexico State, and he headed the Internal Housing Department of the United States government for 30 years. He's an academic, he's an engineer, he's a scientist. He was born on the Zuni reservation at a time when there was no electricity, no running water. He heard the oral histories at a time when it was being passed down from the grandmothers and grandfathers, and heard all of the stories of starvation, of extraterrestrial contact. And those are really incredible stories because it offers a forgotten history. It offers a cultural perspective that we've lost, that white man's world does not have. And it is an incredible opportunity to hear this man who has credibility in the academic world to talk about his credible stories in the mystical world. He speaks of ceremonies of contact with what is called the Space Brothers from an absolutely amazing perspective. So at this point, I'd like to offer a round of applause for Clifford Mahooty.
Boy, I feel like a rock star. Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning, brother.
I want to talk to you from my heart today. And even with technology, you know, that loses a little bit of meaning. But anyway, I'm the only engineer in the world that doesn't know how to use this technology stuff. So. Yeah, before we proceed with my little talk here, I would like for everybody, I think on the next one, I think this is to remind myself to turn off my cell phone. So I would like at this time to do a prayer in my native Zuni language to ask for blessings for all of us and all the people on the planet, and also to open the pathway to the spirit so that we can have that direct connection. Baluke atone hona yato kedachu yamte lashina kui yela na kwa ke na ho na ona elate baluke atone le aho ili sontina sa ke ate ona onko ataki yashua pa ho na ulo na dikoksika na ho dia yu hetona nashna pa akana tunte kui Hundi wichaman ate kana luke yato no mata shu mata shina iani ke lokashimate okana kono mata chona yana kashane kokasho ani ona yana ke apisa shu ani lestikla pelata le ulona kona tontina sakiate hanat ap manina komansatuna aknia yu hetono nashnawa. What I did was I asked in all Zuni ceremonies, whether it be social or religious, we ask for permission from what we call the raw people, which are spirit world people, to open up the channels so that we can talk freely among us and to have some type of understanding. So this is what I ask, that we all open our hearts and all our channels of communication so we can understand it, not only for us people here, but throughout the people of the whole world. Can you hear me? How's that? I come from the Zuni Nation. If you look at this is Arizona and New Mexico, the biggest, where the brown spot is, that's where, how does this work? Oh, right here. See this part right here? Does it work on both sides? Oh, okay. Like I say, I'm the only engineer in the world that's not used to this stuff. So if you look at the map over here, the biggest portion of it is the Navajo Nation. And of course, right there on the bottom is where we're close by, is the Gila reservation and all the other ones that are spread around through Arizona and New Mexico. My nation is situated near what they call the Four Corners area, and this is just a road that goes into our Pueblo. If you look at on the right-hand side, you're looking south right now, coming in from I-40 off of Gallup, New Mexico. We have into the reservation, we have on the reservation line, we have these type of emblems that are on there. This is normally the emblem that is used on all of our groups that go out there to different parts of the world, whether it be the firefighters, whether it be when we do that. That is a designated. It's got a rainbow on top and the sun father in the middle. This is ancient Zuni. This was these photos were taken in the 1880s by a person by the name of Curtis. He's very well famous for having taken pictures of Indians way back in those days. This is what Zuni Pueblo looked like in the late 1800s. As you can see that it's a Pueblo design. They got the ladders on the side. And this is where a lot of my great-grandfathers and grandmothers grew up with these type of structures. And this is present day, this is what they call the plaza. Every Pueblo has a plaza where they perform ceremony. And this is one of the typical dress that they used to have back in the late 1800s. And we always wore headbands and blankets. And this was the official dress of Indians in those days. Of course, we had the pottery. Those people in those days used to carry pottery on their heads. They knew how to balance it. And in this photo, they had these two maidens carrying water from the river, and it's all filled with water, and it was very amazing. When I was a kid, I used to see these people used to go take water like that, and it's really amazing. That's one of the tests that the maidens had to perform before they passed on to get a husband. So it must have been tough. And this is the way that they used to have, they used to collect their firewood. It was by burros. Hey, wait a minute, that's a Democrat, isn't it? And this is, remember when we were talking about the Spanish invasion? This is one of the things that was adopted from the Spanish, which are called the hornos or the ovens. To this day, we use these for baking bread, primarily sourdough bread. They fill the fire in there. It's just like a pizza oven, and they take out charcoals and they put the bread in there. It's hard work, but it tastes good. This is a picture that's on the southern side, the eastern side of the village. In our mythology or in our history, we also have the story of the Great Flood. There's two rock formations over here that is supposedly designated as the son and daughter of the head priest of the tribe at that time. They sacrificed his own children so the waters can recede. This is where at this same time period is when the story or the legend or myth of the plumed serpent comes into play. As you probably well know from many different books and background about Quetzalcoatl, that's down in South America. All the Pueblo tribes in New Mexico have the plumed serpent. The plumed serpent, through my research, is the serpent or the god of knowledge. All Indian children, male children, are initiated into the Kachina Society, which I'll cover a little later. And that is the supreme serpent that is the god of knowledge that was given to make the direct connection with with the star people and the cosmology. So there is a very complex approach to it, and each tribe has their designated places of where this plumed serpent has their grounds, or where they're located. In one of the pueblos up in towards Taos, New Mexico, there's a pueblo called San Ildefonso, and right in Nam Bay, there's a spring over there, and there's a lake underneath it. Every time that it rains, the whole mountain shows a whole picture of the serpent. When the water hits the side of the mountain, it's exactly the way that we have it in all our pueblos. So this is it's really an amazing thing. The only time it appears is when it had rain, and the rest of the time when it dries up, you cannot see that. But this place is called Doi Alani in our language, which means the ancient mountain. And this is where the Spanish, when they invaded the pueblos, this is where they found refuge between about 1540 through for about 50 years. They were up there, and this is where it's like a fortress on top, because it was hard to climb up there. So and then they came down after the Pueblo revolt, which is probably about I think it was about 1680 or somewhere thereabouts. But there's a lot of history on this, and so we have, looking at all the different parts of the parallels throughout the world of the Great Flood. This is where the Zunis survived during the Great Flood. And these are other pictures of that same mountain looking at different angles. And here's one thing that we as tribal elders or leaders or people of spirituality, we request for rain. That's because of the water that has growth for everything. One of the things that has a lot of parallels with our brothers to the south, which is the Aztecs, the Mayans, and different Indian tribes out there, is the origins. The Zuni mythology talks about after the world flipped on its axis the last time, and when we went through the turmoil that occurred during that time, and we had to survive somewhere, and that time we went underground after the third world was demolished, or when the earth changed its polarity. So this is maybe millions of years ago. We really don't know. In the Zuni timeline, we say that was a very, very long time ago, and there's words for it which is very kind of hard to understand. And so I would ask the grandfathers and grandmothers, how long ago was that? And I'm used to linear time, and they just say, well, it was a long time ago. And I kept saying, when was that? And this is the Grand Canyon, and if you know about some of the references about the Egyptians being there, there's a lot of stories and a lot of legends or myths about the different peoples that were concentrated down there. Of course, the Hopi were in there, different tribes that are probably now extinct or went in to become other tribal members. But the one thing that's very sort of mysterious about it is that the insectoid people were the ones that took care of the people when they were down in the refuge of this thing. And of course, when after they came out, after the world had settled down, there was references to a lot of different deities that were inside the ground, and one of them was the Ant Society people. To this day, we have one of the medicine orders are called the Ant Society people, and they're the medicine people. They're the curers of anything that related to like rashes, diseases that are caused by insects. Those are the ones that have that medicine in order to do these things. So there's a lot of things that came forth after the fourth world was created. And if you look at down there, this is the Colorado River, and the references are made that it's a mile deep. And so this was millions of years ago, and the Grand Canyon was already over there. So in time-wise, we really don't know, but that all our legends and all our songs, chants, refer to that in the beginning. When they say in the beginning, it doesn't mean the beginning of the earth. It says in the beginning after the last polarity shift, and all our songs, chants, and ancient rituals are based upon that. And this is for the confluence of the little Colorado River and the regular big Colorado. And this is where a lot of people call this the Sipapu. You probably heard the Hopi term of it, in the Zuni term is Shipapulima. There's many places we call it Shipapulima where they're like stargates or wormholes of recent understanding. And these are places where, in this situation here, this is where they came from underneath the ground into what we call the present fourth world. And this still exists to this day, this place, and this sort of is equivalent to our Garden of Eden. And so we pay homage to it. There's a lot of times that we make pilgrimages to this place called in different parts of the Grand Canyon, which have direct access to the underground systems, underground caverns. Now, I'm not in the order of any high up, like only the priesthood and the heads of the different medicine societies are designated to go into this type of, I guess they were more sort of like caverns. Most of them are behind waterfalls. The doorways are hidden by the waterfalls. I had an occasion to talk to one of my medicine head of the Medicine Society. He went into the middle, somewhere in the middle. I think it was either Ribbon Falls or Rainbow Falls. There's a waterfall. He walked in there, and because he has that authority to walk in there. And he tells me that you can hear the waterfall when you're outside. It's like a thunderous, tremendous, noisy sound. But when he passed in through the waterfall and he went inside, he could see the people outside on the other side of the waterfall, and he said he was real quiet inside. He said that he could see them and he could hear them talking, but when he later on, when he came out and he asked him, he said, did you hear me when I was hollering at you guys? And he said, we never heard anything. It's the waterfall is too deafening. But so there are places like this in the Grand Canyon. That's not only one, but there's several of them. And depending on which order you belong to, we have designated spots within the Grand Canyon. And these are what they call our passageways into the fourth world. It's my understanding from not only from the scientific community, but also from the elders and the medicine people, the spiritual people, that there are a lot of rooms underneath there. And of recent times, we were there in May of last year. We were looking for a gate that goes in there that was designated in one of the, I think this was back in 1908 by a person by the name of Kincaid. He had been in that canyon. And there's a doorway in there, but it's sort of like a stargate type. So we were looking for that. We didn't find it, but we're going to make another attempt. There's approximately 400 rooms based upon the modern deep penetrating radar that we have, that the military uses. But also what is really fascinating is that there's designated names of the Egyptians when they were talking about that yesterday. And of recent times, I was at one of the UFO conventions, and there's a person that talked about a pyramid that was inside the Grand Canyon, and I haven't done any, haven't followed up on the research on that. And this was, I also go to that group called the UFO Congress every year. It's held here in Fort McDowell. And so there's a lot of research that's going on there about that pyramid, about the size of the ones in Egypt. There's inside the Grand Canyon. Now there's a lot of legends within our tribe, and not only mine, but the Hopi, other Pueblo tribes. They talk about some of the systems that are still inside. One of the latest one is that there's a copper, looks like a copper rod that's about 18 to 2 feet in diameter that goes on from somewhere on top of the Grand Canyon that penetrates all the way down and nobody knows where it's at. Going back to this, the incident that my head medicine man, when he was in there, he went in there, he did a blessing with the gods that are inside the earth. And he said that he dropped a rock in there to see how deep it is. And he said when he dropped that rock in there, he said he did not hear any sound if it ever hit bottom of anywhere, whether it be water or sound. So he said that is a hole in there that penetrates, nobody knows how far deep it is. But these are our sacred grounds, and because it's a national monument, I think it's a national park, Grand Canyon National Park, a lot of us don't have any access to it, which is true also with other places throughout the United States. And even though we have access to it through our sovereign nation and our religious attempts to go into this, there's always got to be a ranger with us. There's always got to be an archaeology anthropologist accompanying us, and we don't do what we are supposed to be doing. So that's one of the reasons that there's a lot of blockages that have been put in forth by law that we don't have direct communication with our spirit world. And this is one of the reasons that they say, well, because we cannot make contact with the spirit people, he said there are a lot of problems arising from that. And that causes the upset of the balance of not only nature, but the upset of people. So this is what we have all agreed upon, based upon what we've experienced. Now here's another place that we looked at based upon that the Hopi emergence, and we're still going back there, going to look at this underground city, probably about next year. We still haven't got enough funding yet, but this is a very significant part of our mythology. The other part of it is in a place called Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratories. There's also another, what might be considered a wormhole or a stargate. And this is where the Medicine Society is. It's also called Shipapulima in our language. And the word is the same in all Pueblos. It means that the place where the gods come through or came through. And there is the same word in all the different Indian tribes. There's basically about 6 different tribal dialects. Of course, the Hopi, which are related to the Aztec, according to the linguists, which are the direct descendants, or their homeland is from the Lemurian people. And our Zuni tribe is a combination of many different groups, which makes references not only to the Lemurians but also to the Atlanteans. In Zuni, we use the crystal technology that has been in place for centuries. And the only thing when I ask these questions, where do we learn how to use these things? He said we got it from our star brothers. So that goes into my next presentation. The star people, we every night or every ritual that we go through, we have a prayer system. And when we refer to the night people, this is the only part of the whole religious prayer system that has a reference to a female part of it. Not only the male, but the female star brotherhood includes the female. And also, of course, the high order of what we call the priesthood. Every direction gods are the priesthood. But in this case, they're the night people also include a female. That was kind of interesting. If you look at some of the background information that is derived up to this date about ufology, there's always somebody, especially in abduction cases, about when people are put on spacecraft, that there's always a female counterpart within those spaceships. And there's even some people that have written, I don't know, maybe they're dreaming or something, but they actually had sexual relationship with the female star people. So I don't know. But this now one of the an order which is Zuni is a complex makeup of many different types of orders. One of the biggest order that I talked about with the plumed serpent deity is the Kachina system or order. It's a priesthood, actually. Now, Kachina is a term that was developed by, I believe it's Fred Harvey during the time when the railroads first came through. And the actual word in any of the Pueblo is Kachina, but because it's anglicized, like the term I have it over here is Kachina. I think a lot of you folks have probably seen those dolls that have been made, and the Hopis were the first ones that came up with it back in the early days during the Fred Harvey chain, the Grand Canyon, and of course the railroad system. Probably immediately right after Second World War. But prior to that, all Indian tribes used to make kachinas. It was not a toy. It was not a curio. It was part of the whole system of a training process for young people, and especially the girls, when they would give those kachinas and how to grow up to take care of things. And it was a teaching tool at the same time it was a spiritual connection. In the old days, when we were little babies, that they would put us in cradles, wrap us around, and a lot of these had, first of all, we had the turquoise for protection. We were talking about gems the other day, our precious stones or spiritual stones, and the other one was the kachina. They had these little kachinas about that size that would be in the rooms, and they were the protectors. In my education from my grandmothers and grandfathers, I started looking at a lot of these kachinas, and there's many different kinds. This one that I have on there is what we call the path maker or the path finder. If you look at the configuration and the painting on that, this is the first one that comes in on all activities of the religious order Kachina ceremony. And if you look at the spots on there, that reminds you of a lot of different colored stars. Even the helmet mask that is on there, it looks like some type of a craft. So this is in the Zuni term, it's called shula, which means that it's usually a young boy, and he is, even though he doesn't have a rank, as high up as that he's the first one that goes in there. Now you use the same analogy on a lot of these the spacecraft or that the ufology field. Only the little orbs or the little spacecraft are the ones that are like the pathfinders. They're the ones that come off of the huge ship. Some of them are like anywhere from 1 mile to 5 miles across. And the only ones that come in there are the small ones, and these are the ones that have been observed. So if you look at the same analogy on this one here, this is the first guy that comes in there before the rest of them come in. So it takes a lot of research, and it took me a lot of research to find out what is the significance of these Kachinas. So that's one Kachina out of the whole system here. Now the Kachina order was not part of the creation myth that started in the Grand Canyon. My late father was one of the high order Kachina people, and I asked him when I was about, maybe doing a lot of research, and I said, where did they come from? Why are they in this? What is the significance of this Kachina system? And through his teachings and through his information, I found out from him and others later on is that in the old days, after the Zunis had settled down to where they were at in the different pueblos, that it became like lonely. So the priesthood of the tribe got together and requested that there be some type of entertainment. We also had to have a connection in how to take care of the earth, how to take care of the people, primarily for entertainment and also to ask for blessings. So in the old days, according to my teachings, is that the actual beings came from different parts of the universe and other galaxies. And that's when they came in their own life form, the way they were. And they would appear, is that they would manifest themselves, and they would appear like in the old Star Trek movies where, you have this thing and all of a sudden they're right here. And when you're a little kid, before you're initiated into know what it's all about, you ask when you're a kid and say, how did the Kachinas get over here? And the answer was always the same. Well, they came on the backs of ducks. So that was a reference that was made to perhaps some type of a vehicle. Where I come from, in the Zuni Nation, I live on the southernmost part of the village. And during times of ceremonial activity that includes the Kachina order, and we do it on a year-round basis. We have the winter dances, we have the summer dances, and on occasion there will be a lot of UFO activity and a lot of orbs activity, what is now commonly known as orbs. And they're huge ones. So this, and again, based upon my research, and one of the things that really helped me quite a bit was that I have been exposed to the outside world. My counterpart in Zuni would not have the same interpretation that I would have as far as the connection, because they have not had an opportunity to go out there and learn about the cosmos from other ways. So this really helped me in learning about physics and of course of latter-day things like ufology, about the spirit world, and also the technology that's involved. There's a lot of technology that was given to us from the star people, and that's where else would they have gotten it? One of the prayer systems that we have is that we, in many different medicine orders, is that we refer to the stars, and also the first layer around the earth, we call it a rock roof. That's a literal meaning of the rock roof. Means, as I said, well, what is a rock roof? He said, it's the one that surrounds the earth, and because of the ancient ways of interpretation, that's the only way how they can explain it. When the rocketry program first started way back in the early 60s, the elders of the tribe used to get together in the Keas, and they would talk about the white men are now going to break the rock roof. What the literal meaning is that the rock roof, that they're going to penetrate that and say once they penetrate and break open the rock roof, there will be some bad things coming through. This was back in during the, first of all, it was the Mercury series, and then of course later on the Apollo. So I would sit in there with them, and I would explain to the grandfathers, I said, there's no rock roof up there. He said, but their interpretation was entirely different than the scientific and the technological part. But that's just the way they were taught throughout centuries. And so, if you recall about that era, there was that when they broke the ozone layer. And the ozone layer was broken, and the grandfathers would say, yes, this is what we were talking about. So there's a lot of things that, even though that they didn't have the scientific background, but in our teachings they knew what they were talking about. And of course, when you're a little kid growing up, the first order that's given to you as in all family structure, in all whatever is that when you're a little kid, they teach you not to look up to the sky at nighttime. Do not look up to the sky at nighttime. I did this as a test one time with the little kids about 3 or 4 years ago. I walked into I think it was a Head Start program, and the first question I asked him, I said, hey, you children, do you look up into the sky at nighttime? They said, no, you're not supposed to look up into the sky at nighttime. Well, I was kind of different. I used to look up there. So the reason is that there's in the Zuni tradition, the nighttime is for the other people of the universe, and you're on the planet. You are not supposed to look up in the sky, because I asked my grandfathers and grandmother, how come I can look up to the sky at nighttime? Of course they'll get angry at me, but they'll say, because somebody will look down on you. And so, I had that instilled on me when I was a little kid, and then when I started going into ufology, I started breaking the rules. And it was very exciting. In a lot of our medicinal order systems, which I'll go into it in a little bit, but what we have is that there's a lot of references to different constellations and different star systems in the sky. There's a lot of books being written about it. A friend of mine named Gary David has written a whole bunch of books on the Orion, the layout of the Orion and the Hopi villages, same way with the ones that the pyramids are set up in the same setup over there on the other side of the world. And these are based upon that Orion's belt. And in all of our references, there's a term that literally means the stars that are lined up. And so I asked the question, I said, what do they mean by the stars that are lined up? So they took me out to the sky, out at nighttime in the wintertime, and they said, look up there. So I looked up there, and they showed me showed me where Orion's belt is. Where is it? Or somewhere here. Right here. And that is termed in our all religious medicine orders prayer systems, and the literal meaning is that the ones that are lined up, the words. And I said, what is that? He said, that's Orion's belt. Oh, okay, here I am, a technologically advanced person, don't know anything about what the ancients are talking about, And of course, this is very interesting. And the next step, the next prayer is the one that we make a reference to. And the literal meaning in Zuni, the word for Zuni is Quileleka, which means seven, the seven. And so during my teachings, when I got into the order, I said, what do they mean by the seven? And then they would get angry at me again. You say, well, you're supposed to be the scientist. You're supposed to be the engineer. Did they teach you anything? I said, yeah. I was like, so they'll take me out to he said, up there, he said, that's where the seven are. And so I said, oh, that's Pleiades. Yeah. I said, when did you guys learn this? And then they kicked my butt again and said, this was given to information given us by the Star Brothers. And as you well know, before telescopes, nobody knew how many stars there were in the Pleiades. How come the Indians knew that centuries ago? So this is pretty soon everything got coming into play, here. So so this is quite interesting to learn about all the different star references or constellations or galaxy, whatever. And here's the one that for a long time, in the old days, they used to, the Zuni people would go gourds, the one with the long necks, and they would cut the top of it off, and they used to use them for dippers, to drink water or for cooking or whatever. And I always wondered what that term meant. And it was a spoon, but there was a peculiar name to it, and they call it kupakwe in Zuni. So when I became into the medicine order, there was a reference to kupakwe, and I had always known to say that it's a dipper that you drink out of from a pot of water. And said, no, he said, yeah, that's true, but the real one is up there, which is Ursa Major. So this is also a reference in all religious designations, and that's where the direct reference is made to where we were taught where they actually came through or came from or our knowledge systems. And of course, the last one in the religious order system is the supernova, and the literal meaning in Zuni is the starburst. It looks like a starburst when you look at it, and they said that throughout history, they used to see those things, and a lot of those places out there on the Petroglyphs, you can see those things where the Indians tap those things on the side of the walls, and a lot of these, some of them are the supernova effects that occurred. So this is sort of like a reference that is of the systems out there in the universe, where it has a direct reference to what we do every day, almost on a daily basis, about where our gods came from, how they taught us. And we did not, when we came out from the third world into the fourth world, which is now, we were dysfunctional because of being in there for a long time. And so I asked the question, I said, well, who came and brought us out of our ancestors out of the Grand Canyon? And the answer is the same. It was a light force. It was a light force that came and took the people that were in there and said, well, what did he look like, or was it a god, or what is it? He said, all we know is it was a light force. So you can imagine what scientifically, from the scientific standpoint, a light force could be some type of a form of energy or some type of an energy field. But there were also emissaries that accompanied them, which later on gave us the system of clan system, the religious order system. And this is where, I'm going to go to my next topic here. In Zuni today, a clan is sort of like a family unit. It's a subdivision of the entire village. Everybody is born into a clan. We have a matriarchal and a matrilineal society, and we act like we're in charge, but we're really not, you know. We act like we're tough and just, I can do this. And I said, well, okay, well, I gotta go ask my mother first. Or I gotta go get permission from my wife. You know? So today we have basically a surviving group of 12. In my own research, there were at least 20 different clans. And of recently, I would say about 50, I think 50 years ago was the last person of the Sky clan that passed away. And the biggest clan is the Dogwood clan. It's a Dogwood plant clan, and there's a separation. There's two subgroups. The first one is the crow and the parrot. The parrot clan, or the brothers that went south, that's why they chose the bird, which is where do they have parrots? In Mexico. So these are the ones after the separation, when they came out from the underworld. Our brothers that chose the parrot, they migrated south. So we have a lot of Indian tribes that are related to the Pueblo people that went south because they chose the parrot as their clan leader. So this is where our brothers and sisters to the south, they're also referred to as the parrot people. Now this is very hard to explain to a lot of people because they especially the ethnologists and the linguists and the anthropologists, they just seem to think that all of a sudden they just created out of nowhere, like in Mexico or Peru or South America. They even though they have their own history of it, it seems to me that they don't want to understand where all the migrations. There were so many migrations that occurred here at that time, in that era. Nobody really knows. And we also have references in our own tribe to what was perhaps agreed upon to be called what the Welsh people, the white people, they used to go back and forth. We also have references to the people from the east. We call them the little-eyed people, which are basically Orientals, maybe Tibetans. So there's a lot of things that occurred way back in thousands and thousands of years ago. But going back to my clan system here, a lot of these are different maybe animals. First, the next group is the Badger Society, the clan. Then we got the Crane, we got the Sun clan. I belong to the Sun clan. And this, somebody wrote maybe wanted to look for some chili, but it's not Tabasco, it's tobacco. Maybe if you belong to that clan, you'll be a hot mama. then we then we got the mustard plant. The mustard plant the mustard plant comes up real early, and they die by this time. The mustard is already dead, and then of course the bear. And we got the deer clan, the coyote clan, the eagle clan, turkey clan, water clan. And throughout the history, they also have some idiosyncrasies about it's sort of like an inside humor type thing. Is that, well, if you're a badger, you say you're very, very possessive. You know, you're a stingy person. And you know, like what's the other one is that he said, don't ever mess around with a bare woman, you know. And then if you're an eagle clan, you always like to brag about yourself. You think you're there. So it's inside humor. It's very interesting when you go into the social life of the Zuni. There's a mixture of all different people when they go through ceremony. It's a communalistic society, basically. By that, everybody participates in everything, especially during ceremonial, religious ceremonial activity. And one of the questions that I used to ask when my mother used to go cook at these communalistic activities, that who did you guys talk about today? You know, so it's the same all over the world, you know. The other orders that we have is the medicine societies. We have we have basically the 7 that have survived. The water makers are the ones that were the first ones that came when we migrated into present-day Zuni from the Grand Canyon. And again, these were the ones that created the rain, they created that make the soil fertile. And we also have the snake society. Those are the ones that are the treatment of snake bites, scorpion bites and all that. They got anti-venom and then have medicine for those things. And the snake, if you look at the emblem for the medicine society, you know, the caduceus, it's got the snakes that come back and forth, and then some refer to DNA. But in our Zuni world, the snake is, as a matter of fact, full moon was what, 2 nights ago? I'm in violation of protocol or rules right now because I was supposed to be at home performing the ceremony for the snake. What we do is that there's many medicine societies that have the snake as our child. So we prepare prayer sticks and we also give homage to them for them to come out from hibernation. So one of the things that I asked when I got into the order is that how come we take care of the snakes? He said, because they're the ones that go and pollinate the herbs. If you look at a snake, you know how oily the skin it is and the scales. When he crawls around on the ground, he goes over there and there's herbs that are out there that he pollinates the herbs so they can grow. You know, if you have corn, then you know the wind will do it, but way down on the bottom, they also, so that's why we use the reference in the medicine orders of the snake. Just like in the rest of the world, with the caduceus and the snake emblem. The third group is what they call in all pueblos they call the Gushawi, and which are the clown society, and they're the clown medicine society. And this is the one that I belong to, which are called the tricksters, the merrymakers, the ones that are you know, they're the ones that keep everybody in humor. When you go to a plaza, you know, they make fun of people, they make, you know, and so it's just to relieve them. And it's to relieve of their worries, to make them happy. So they got the medicine for that. And the reason that I'm in the medicine order today is that when I was born, I was about 2 weeks old. My dad was in the army during the Second World War. And I was angry because when I was born, my dad was gone. So I was angry, and I didn't want to eat. You know. So my grandmother took me to the Clown Society because they got the medicine. They got the medicine to when you're angry and when you're in depression or whatever. They give you the medicine. But what she did not realize was that it was at that ritual time that she. Even though she knew all the history of it and all the protocols of it, she took me over there, and the clowns captured me. Once they fix you up, then you become part of them. So I did not know this. You know, I'm only 2 weeks old. So when I was told, I think the first time I was told because I think when I was in high school. And I said, I don't want to be those damn clowns. So it took, I ran away. I had excuses for everything. I said, no, I'm going to college. I said, well, okay, well, we'll let you go to, we'll let you pass this time. So when I said, after I graduated from college, they came back again. They said, are you ready? I said, no, I got a very important job, I take care of the President of the United States. You can't touch me. So I did, of course they know that I'm lying, So I did every which way just to get out of it, and finally, I ran out of excuses. So I was initiated when I was in probably when I was 30 years old. A lot of them get initiated when they're maybe about 12, 15 years old. So I'm a late bloomer, I guess. It's really interesting when you go into that phase. You don't even know that. You're like, I'm ashamed. I'm not going to do that. When you're out there, you're a different. You don't even know what you do. It's that the medicine and the our deity is from the Milky Way galaxy. Then of course, when you go into the second step, which is the medicine order system, then that's where you learn a lot about herbs. You learn about different mind-altering drugs, or not drugs, but plants. But like President Clinton, we don't inhale. So it's a very interesting world, and our deity is the one that came from the Milky Way. Our deity from what I had studied, they were sent from different parts of the universe, and they actually landed on the Earth, and then they knew who they were going to be part of. So our deity belongs to the Crane clan. Each one of us each clan has a designation of certain orders. The Kachina clan is run by the Badger and the Deer clan. Yeah. So that and the next group is the Ant clan, Ant Society. The medicine group, and these are the ones that their deity is from the middle of the earth, and they refer to it as a giant white ant. And there was two groups of the big fire, and there was called the little fires, which are the ones that you've probably seen it in many different parts of the world where they actually walk. Where the initiation, as part of their initiation, they used to dig out a big trench in the middle of the plaza for the initiates, and they would burn wood all night and all day, and then when they're ready to when they're ready for graduation, they would bring the initiates out there, and they would walk through the hot fire, coal fire. And if they come out on the other side without barbecued well, then they're in. But this is and also there was another society that went extinct here about 10 years ago. They were the sword swallower clan. They would go. They said that my dad used to tell me about when he was a young man. When in the initiation in the plaza, they would take those swords, like they do it in the magicians or whatever. They would put those swords right through there, all the way down into their throats. And he said some of them were so tough that they would take little trees and they would swallow those things. I mean, whether that was magic or if there was the connection, we're not allowed to divulge that information. So a lot of these ceremonies were close to the outside. So there was a lot of things that were restricted in those days. But what happened was that with the influx of many different of the outside world, we had to go underground. We had to, in so doing, we lost that connection. The other group is what we call, it's one of the bigger ones too, is what we call the uhuhukwe. It's the ones that take care of the internal stuff, lung diseases, breathing problems, these are the internists. If you look at it in a medical professional matrix, you got your dentists and you got your shrinks and you got your surgeons, and so each one of these people have a specialty. And the other ones, which are not the medicine people, but they're sort of like the gods, the guardians, or warrior society is what they call the coyote people. The coyote people are the ones that take care of the protectors. And they also have the same rituals that we do, but there's, one thing that's very interesting about these songs is that at other pueblos, like for example, the pueblos around Albuquerque and even Hopi, we sing the same songs. Whether it's over in my village or the village outside of Albuquerque, usually at the same time. They're singing the same songs, and they're from the medicine group. The medicine order group, their wormhole or their channel or the way they came through was at up there right next to Los Alamos nuclear laboratories. There's a portal over there. I've never been there, but what it is that the way it's described to me is it's a hole about 5 to 6 feet in diameter, and there's a big rock that they put over it, and every so often when they go over there, they open that up. And it's a portal. And I don't know how many people know that. There's a lot of stories about that place over there right next to Los Alamos nuclear labs. It said at one time there was 2 rock carvings of mountain lion. And some guy wanted to take those out and put in his front yard. The sacred mountain lions. He said that when he went out there, he starts digging it out. And the more he dug, the more they start shrinking back in there. So the next time they went back out there to look at it, they had returned to the same place, whether it's by the soil or the moisture coming back up and pushing them back up, so nobody really knows. So there's a lot of mysterious places like that, and that a lot of people try to desecrate, but the gods would not allow them to do that. So this is basic information about some of the systems in in the Zuni world. Now, going back to the Kachina, the biggest ceremony is held in December, and which is what we call the Shalako ceremony. If you look at these are real tall gods. The origin of these Kachinas are the ones that came from different parts of the universe. So if you look at these things, there's two guardians that are, these are what they call the guardian Kachinas, this one here and this one here. And these are what we call the mudheads, or the Kachina clowns. And what's very interesting about this group is that these Kachinas have very they're powerful spirits, but they're children of incest. And so if you look, their dress is that some of them, that's why they're all, see, look at these, like, see, they wear these things, and a lot of the other ones are, which would be considered a gay individual, and they wear women's clothes, but they're very powerful, but they're also, they would be talking and all of a sudden they just slip out, you know, just sort of like the incest, children of incest that doesn't have all together. So this is a good example of what not, you know, do not have sex with your sister, even within your own clan system. That's outlawed. You know, you cannot marry in the same clan because you're gonna, and these are some of the checks and balances that were put into play, and it's seen right there in the plaza. And these are, they're like, the only way that I can probably describe it is that they're like mentally retarded children. And so they said, this is an example, do not do these things. And so this is what their purpose of that. But they also are very powerful Kachina people. And going to my, going on the Chalako ceremony, these are the warrior ones that carry the yaka, and they whip you, and if you're out of line, and so that. One of the things that was very interesting about this whole Shalako system is that when I first started hearing the prayers when I was a young man, I would go to them and I learned a lot about it from just the prayer system. I mean, the songs and the origin of why they're here. And it's a whole year process, but it culminates in one night. And they come in during the daytime and they're gone the next day. And what's very interesting about this whole concept is well, here's one of the leaders of the Kachina group. We call him the Longhorn. Let me just go over here, and I think that there's a. Remember, I was talking about the Galaxy Society. That's what our altars look like during the medicinal practices. And up on top, right here that's the Milky Way galaxy with the stars, and these are the things that are hanging out here are the gods that came from the sky. So if you look at in a lot of different, especially in Egyptology and all that, you know, they have references to the gods that came from the sky. We got the same concepts in Zuni, and the other things are, these things are, you know, like rays that comes out from emission of the different. If you look at it through a telescope, there'll be like sort of like solar flares, but when they emit certain frequencies, that's what they're designated. Of course, this is the star command system type thing reference. Down here are what we call this is our designated. We call them mothers. These are the ones that are given you when you become initiated to become a medicine man. And there's a lot of things. This picture is not whole because usually during ceremony, of the curing ceremony, there'll be crystals. sitting all the way around this area. Crystals that are different shapes and sizes that has been given throughout the, nobody really knows how far back, and they use this for the curing practices, and that's also for energy receiving and transmission. And we talked about duality yesterday or a couple of days ago, and during this ceremony, when we cleanse the earth and the people, and one of the healing tools is quartz technology, and I've seen those in operation, and of course it's very scientific, but at the same time it's ancient technology. So these are what we still practice to this day. And a lot of people are not familiar or have no understanding of it. They just accept it as it is what it is type thing. Is that Clinton again? Now going back to the ceremony that I was talking about, if you look at this thing, it is a huge, it's about, at least 8 feet tall. You look at, when I first started learning this through the Kachina Kiva system, if you look at this whole thing here, you know what comes into play. Remember in the old capsules way back under Apollo? You know how they used to look out? There's a pilot in there, and here's the co-pilot. If you look at this is something that way back in history, these are what came from different parts of the universe, and the way I know that is because by the songs that they sing for them. Each one has a different song. The other thing too is that there's a beak on there here, and their communication is like Morse code. Each clap is the designated clap of that particular one. So there's 6 of them because they come from the 4 + 2 directions. And you can tell by which one it is by the sound of the clap. And these are been designated, nobody knows how far back. Now this picture was probably taken in about the 1870s or 1880s. But it's still the same makeup. It's got the same, I talked to a lot of aeronautical engineers, they talk about the pitch and the roll and the yaw. And so it's all designed into this thing here. It doesn't have any arms. See this? There's no arms, there's no external things. And it's got like there's something in the back, you can see it here. Maybe we can see it in the next one. That's got a, here's what they dress like. If you look at any pilot, what they have is that they have a rank, on the rank here. And here is, on this one here, there's a little, looks like an antenna, and they're built like that. What really is fascinating is when this ceremony is going on, say like this impersonator wants to take a drink of water. They have to remove this mask or this headgear, which is this one here. They have to remove that off in order for him to drink. After he takes a drink of water, then the helpers will put it back on him, and he carries a weapon, but he doesn't use that weapon. It's a tomahawk. So this is what my theory came about. I say, hey, this is really, really interesting. These are parallels. So the more I started researching into that, there's a lot of things that became parallel to space technology. Okay, here's a good comparison of it. If you look at this, how else would they have traveled from different parts of the universe to the Earth? So this is one way of looking at it. Like here's one that's got all the features of it over here, and the same way over here. You know, you have your communication system here, you got your communication system here, which is also right like that. You also have the command inside, there's something that's inside here, you know, capsules and whatever. So I've been ridiculed a lot by my fellow Zuni people for coming up with something like this. And I said, instead of ridiculing me, listen to the songs, listen to the prayer, what do they say? You know, it's just like an analogy of a poet. I mean, a poetry, reading a poem. You give a person a poem, and boy, this person is so eloquent. He's got that flowery language, and you know, he goes through the real drama and all that. You take that piece of paper away from him, and now he said, now explain to me what the poem meant. And he'll say, well, I don't know, I just read it. Yeah. So this is the analogy that I use. He said, listen to the prayers, look a little deeper, and you'll understand that this is what they're talking about. And it's in Zuni language. And so this is, so I get ridiculed a lot, but that's okay. The Keas, which I talked about, each shalako is represented by this group. In the beginning, the Kachina Society was not made until after the Zunis were settled. Like I said before, the true Kachinas were the ETs. The true Kachinas were the ETs that used to come over here, and they used to, and because of their abductions and falling in love, the people falling in love with them, and so they had to revert to them, and they had a truce. It was a truce between the space gods and the priesthood of the Zuni people. Who said, we cannot continue to do this because our population is lessening. So they came and said, okay, you do what we have been doing for you up to this point. We will be there, we'll be invisible, but you will be us. So that's why they made up the Kachina system. And it's very interesting that if you look at the places like the Chaco Canyon, they refer to that big hole in the ground as the Great Keas. The Keas were not in existence for Kachinas at that time, this started maybe about 1000 AD, because it's very recent. So that prior to that, they were actually came in their form. In the true ETs. So these are the 6 Keas, and each represents the direction. Of course, in the Zuni cosmology, the yellow is north, and we call it the manure kiva. It's in the blue, which is a reference to the Pacific Ocean, and the corn plant is the red, which is from the red from Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico, and so on. And I don't know where these names come about. I think it's just through the way that they used to. There must have been different names prior to that, but these are the ones that exist today. That's their sort of like their nicknames type thing, and each one has a color, white, which I used to belong to this group. And then the small group is the mixed color, and the backyard, which is the black. And so this is really the whole concept of how the Kachina systems are all about in Zuni. And there's many books on it. You can go back there, and there's a lot of books on that you can research, and you can probably Google Zuni and they'll show you all the different parts. This is one of the Pueblos, used to be the Pueblos during the time of Coronado. remember when Graham Hancock was talking about after the Spaniards desecrated the people down south, and this is where I was talking about where they went up on this mountain here. This is us looking from the south, and when I first saw these things, the only thing that I can come to conclusion with is that during the time when this Pueblo was in existence, this must have been some type of a solar observation, maybe the moon, and I haven't really gone out there and done any research on it because the sun, every Pueblo in Zuni had a sun priest, took care of the sun. I mean the seasons for planting and all that. So I haven't really researched on this one yet. Now, one of the things that we have in Zuni is that it's all oral history. It's all our prayers are oral. And that's what really used to really, I thought I was going to be smart. And I said, well, I'm going to put all this in, I'm going to write all this down and I'm going to put it in tape recordings. And when CDs came about, they said, I'm going to put this on CDs. It doesn't work. So because he said, how come it's not working? I said, he said, you got to talk from the heart. You cannot learn this from a book. You cannot learn this from a recording. You have to learn it from the heart. And so the thing that we have on a lot of cases out there is that these are the records of times past. And we go into the Hardscrabble Canyon is where they made the clan system after the migration from the Grand Canyon. There's me with a friend of mine that we're looking at, we're close to, see this figure here? We're around in this area, right behind a big tree is the cave of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, and that's what this figure is. And there's so many petroglyphs in that area, and one of the things that are very interesting, probably see in the next slide, is that these are right here. One of the things that we found, and some of you are familiar with the Ancient Aliens guy named David Hatcher Childress, and David talks like a little kid. He's all excited, and we're in this canyon. We're in this canyon, and he's really going. And I said, David, slow down. I said, this echo is really killing me. Well, what he was looking at was this thing here. Boy, that really. See this one here? And this is a UFO. And that's what he was so excited about. And so there's a lot of petroglyphs, that's our records of things that were seen in the past by our record keepers. And these were not graffiti. These were because they had no other way of recording things, and so this would outlast a long time. It would outlast a CD. It would outlast a tape recording. It would outlast a photograph. So this is the way to do that record keeping. And we still got those out there. There's so many of them that. And here's another one that this looks like probably a reference to what I talked about, the ant people with the little antennas. And here are some of the things that were perhaps back in the days what they look like. You can see the eyes, and so there's so many of them. And this looks like some type of a weird monster type guy. Maybe he was maybe he inhaled and drew that one. I don't know. And of course, again, this is probably a reference to a Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Now, in the Bigfoot lore of the medicine societies is that we call him the man-beast. he is not. He's also a supernatural being, and that's why nobody really has captured one of them.
How many are there?
There's all kinds. They're all over the world. You know that, what is it, the abominable snowman, the Yeti? Then you go up to Northern California, they got Sasquatch, and the Patterson film that supposedly filmed that Sasquatch. But in our society, his name is Wewapa, which means big feet. Wewapa. And in the old days, in the Kachina dances, a person would imitate or become a Kachina of that, and he used to have big feet when he go into the plaza, and everybody would be scared of him, you know. Yeah. Okay. Take a break?
No, we've got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. So all right. So here's one thing that's probably when the ancients saw in the sky, probably a starburst of some kind. We're talking about aurora borealis. That's perhaps one of the ways that they figured that out. But there's Zuni. You can drive out 10 minutes from my house in any direction. You'll find all these different references. And the other thing too that I want to show you here is what's very interesting. We picked this up when we were filmed with the Ancient Alien guys, and this was about probably one of the first episodes. Those of you that probably saw those Ancient Aliens on the History Channel too, and when we did a film, they made a film of it for about 2 or 3 hours, and all of a sudden they only gave me about 5 nanoseconds to be on there. He's a very, very interesting guy here. Look at this. When we first went out there, we didn't see it because the sun was in a different direction. And when we finally went out there, I don't know if you can, there's his head, there's his neck, and there's his body. You can probably show it better on this one here. I mean, this was recorded thousands and thousands of years ago. And all this is record of what what they saw in those days. And here's one thing that looks like an animal, but it isn't. It looks like, you know, like something that are coming out of there. It looks like a vehicle of some sort. And these are usually depicted as mountains where they saw them at. I won't get into this one because a lot of the Indian tribes have like the chunky stones that have representatives like flying saucers. In our tribe, we call them ancient stones. And you know, these are the ones that are from up in the Mississippi Indian tribes, and they started making these things way back in those days. So I have a big story about this. I had my encounter right after a month after this one with Travis Walton at the same time. And in my book, I'm going to explain more about this, of what happened. It's really a weird experience. I was picked up by what I thought were friends of mine from the village, but they were actually aliens, I think. And what was really funny was that the vehicle they picked us up in it looked like a 1930s, one of those, the cars that they used during the time when they used to, Prohibition and the gangster movies. And it was really interesting because, the first thing I asked this guy that was driving is, like, what kind of car is this? It doesn't make any noise. And he just kind of looked at me. But that's gonna be one of my chapters in the book. And these are some of the activity that's going on the reservation almost on a daily basis. Chemtrails, helicopters, black helicopters. There's a stealth bomber that crashed probably in either the late 1900s or 2000. A stealth bomber that was chasing a UFO, and the UFO locked in the stealth, and it crashed about 5 miles from where I live at, and it obliterated the whole craft. And so I'm still doing research on it. And that's me during the UFO convention. And the word Elakwa in Zuni means thank you. Elakwa. Judy, good.
Absolutely.
All right.
What a brilliant presentation. So, thank you so much for Elder Clifford Mahooty. It takes courage to bring forth this kind of information, and this is interpreted, and you have probably seen the most brilliant presentation that interprets all of this in an open, honest way that has ever been presented. And so another round of applause.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Was it good?
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name is James Tyberonn, and I am at the Earth-Keeper WESAK event in Scottsdale, Arizona, with two of our featured guest speakers, Graham Hancock and Clifford Mahooty. And so welcome, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And part of the topic of our weekend gathering is the revelation, the revealing of the truth. And so I think both of you represent very interesting aspects and facets of our attempt to understand a little bit more about the reality, the expansion of reality that we were in. So I'd like to direct the first question to Graham Hancock, and you've just given a brilliant presentation, and you talk about the possibilities, the experiences of alternate dimensions of reality, and about the recognition of ancient civilizations that were far more advanced, of honoring the theta state of consciousness, where we focus on the alert beta state. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, the conclusion that I've come to after years of research and investigation and experiences is that this thing called reality is way much more complicated than we imagine and that we are taught by our society. And that we have our five senses, and with those five senses we are able to tune in to a particular level of reality, which is the material plane of reality. But we would be quite mistaken to imagine that that is the only level of reality. Just as in the past 500 or 300 years ago, people had no idea that certain kinds of sickness were caused by little creatures that we now call bacteria. You know, they needed the right equipment in order to see those bacteria. They needed to extend their senses using microscopes. I would say that that's a good analogy for the whole story of reality. That there is a vast unseen reality, which is in the non-material plane of existence, which is permeated by consciousness, and that it is normally inaccessible to our senses while we are in the alert problem-solving mode, and that it's only if we use certain techniques to alter our state of consciousness, to step out of that alert problem-solving mode, that we become aware of the vast, indeed limitless, infinite expanse of reality, and the possibility that it is filled with intelligence, and that intelligence, whether we like it or not, is interested in us. And therefore, it's better that we get to grips with those other intelligences.
And so the idea to expand on that would be that perhaps through the theta level of consciousness, we have the possibility to enter what the ancients may have considered the dream world.
Yes.
Or an area in which we can experience some of these other dimensions and entities of our realities.
Absolutely. And in which time itself, as we understand time, as this linear process of time, so that's why our culture doesn't believe in things like prophecy, and it doesn't believe that anything like that is possible. It's because we have a very linear view of time. But in these other states of consciousness, time takes on a different meaning in a different place.
Yes.
And you can tune into all times and all epochs in those states of consciousness.
And so I would. That brings us to we speak about our culture, about our history, and we have with us Clifford Mahooty, who is a Zuni Elder. He is also a graduate engineer from New Mexico State, and I want to make sure I get that right. And you've told me we had the opportunity back in April. We were both being interviewed by the Travel Channel, and I had the remarkable experience of hearing your interview before mine, and you were telling us about a forgotten history of the Zuni people, of the Pueblo people, and of a society that actually, as part of their process of manhood, of adulthood, of initiation, engaged in certain things that open the theta consciousness, such as vision questing, ceremonies. Can you tell us a little bit about the reservation that you grew up on and some of the stories that you heard from the grandmothers and grandfathers?
I was born and raised on the Zuni Indian Reservation in New Mexico. It's around the Four Corners area. And I had been born into many different, what we call the clan system, and what we call the different order of the Medicine Society systems. And also one of the biggest societies is what we call the Kachina Society. And we take on the impersonation through many rites of passage through initiation, that we perform those ceremonies that were actually performed in the old days by those beings that were actually coming from a different universe or other star systems and other galaxies. And those are the ones that taught us how to perform these ceremonies for taking care of Mother Earth and also all living things, not only the plant and animals, but other things within the whole universe. And so this is, we have sort of been isolated for a number of years, and of course if you look at history, we had to go underground on a lot of these systems in order to protect what we had been given by the ones that are taking care of us. In this case, it would be what the Zuni term called raw people, R-A-W, in the definition of uncooked. Those things, those beings are the raw people that are in all levels of consciousness and in all dimensions. And in the Zuni world...
Let me just ask you a question here. That's an interesting term that you say, raw people, as in uncooked. Now there's a theory by Dr. J. Alfred that there is inorganic forms of consciousness in what he calls bioplasma. In other words, spirit beings, in a sense, that have not taken physical form. Could it be a possibility that by raw people, they mean non-physical?
That's the term that is used for when you talk about, when you go into the nuclear physics end of it, they're talking about plasma physics.
Yes.
And extra dimensional things, but because of their language in their interpretation, that's the best that they can do. And they're the ones that told us that we will be there, but we will not be in the physical form. We will be in spirit, and we're in the air. We're right beside you, and we're right behind you. We're with you all the time, 24/7. And we will tell you, we will project what is going to happen in the future, but we reserve the right not to tell you when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen, and this is where prophecy comes in.
That's fascinating.
And so we have been taught, and there's so many orders within the Zuni culture and system, when I talk about things like the Kachina Society, for example, or the representative of the ethereal beings that were the beings that actually used to come in light form to the ancient Indian civilization, especially the Zunis and other people like the Hopi and all the other Pueblo Indians. And because of their abduction and people falling in love with them because of their pure energy and pure love, that they would start thinning out the tribe, so to speak. And so they had to go and resort into a different order, and the Kachina order became one that we represent those beings that are from the different parts of the universe. And we went through stargates or wormholes, what is commonly known today. But they would appear, and when after the ceremonies were done, then they would disappear. And in those days, there were certain parts of the reservations within a distance. In some cases, it was in parts of Arizona today. That they would go back to wherever they came from through those. The only thing that I can explain through them is the portals and the stargates.
Yes.
We still have those in existence today.
Fascinating.
So these are what we term the raw people in the Zuni language.
Yes.
And they can appear, in many occasions they can appear. And there's been many, especially in the ethnology and the anthropological books written by those explorers, that they have actually been interpreted by those people when they talked to my ancestors way back in the 1800s, and this is what they had, this is what they looked like, and this is what they did. So their interpretation tends to lose some of that whatever the meaning was. But again, it's taking the Zuni language into the English language.
Yes.
So you lose a lot of that, a lot of solidness through the interpretation.
But that's absolutely fascinating. And Graham, just to direct the question to you, you've made a lot of brilliant studies and researches about ancient civilizations, and of course, one of the big questions that comes up among people today is the possibility of evidence of extraterrestrial societies having been on the Earth before.
Yeah.
Do you think in Egypt that there was absolutely an advanced society that was perhaps extraterrestrial?
Well, see, the use of the word extraterrestrial carries a certain amount of baggage
Yes.
in our culture. I personally have no doubt that ancient civilizations and indeed more recent civilizations have, from the very beginning, the whole human race been in contact with non-human intelligent entities. But whether those entities can be simplistically reduced to high-tech beings a bit like us in physical form who got here in spaceships by, I don't know, breaking light speed and crossing interstellar space, I have a feeling it's more complicated than that. And for me, the UFO, the flying saucer, is its elusive character. But nevertheless, they do show up on radar screens from time to time. Suggests to me that we're maybe dealing with interdimensional visitors.
Yes.
That these visitors are not simply crossing space in this universe, but they're crossing from one level of reality into another. Yes. And that's what the flying saucers are. They're vehicles for crossing between dimensions.
Yes.
And that therefore, when we talk about aliens and UFOs, I find myself wanting to resist the purely nuts and bolts idea of this. Yes. That it is just slightly more evolved creatures who are basically like us. I think that we're dealing with a whole different level of intelligence,
yes.
A different level of reality. But nevertheless, that all of these dimensions are interconnected, and in a sense what we do here in this one does matter, and may have profound effects on other dimensions and other levels of reality, and perhaps that's why they're interested in us.
Yes.
So I think that when the ancient Egyptians talked of their encounters with the gods and the lessons and the teachings they received from them, I think we should take them very, very seriously. That these were intelligences and entities from a whole other level of reality, who interact with us and work with us, just as shamans in hunter-gatherer societies today are encountering intelligences and entities, and may sometimes even depict them in the form that Westerners would recognize as a UFO or as an alien.
Yes.
But I think we should resist rushing to the conclusion that there's a simple technological solution to this. I think it's much more mysterious than that.
Yes. And Clifford, we've spoken before about Zuni Coismology, about the Star Nation, the Space Brothers. Daniel Pinchbeck has written about the Pueblo Indians having names for the Pleiadians, for the Syrians, for the Arcturians. Is that true with the Zuni as well, that they have knowledge of these star places and a tradition, a cultural, oral history of contact with people from Sirius, from the Pleiades? You've spoken about Kachinas as possibly being extraterrestrial.
Well, Kachinas are one group.
Yes.
There are various, I mean, it's a very big structured organization that come from different parts of the different galaxies, different star systems.
And for those that aren't familiar, the Kachinas, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they are the beings that are said to have brought corn to the native peoples, but also are they the ones that provided the underground sanctuary during the flood in their oral histories?
The underground sanctuary was supposedly guided by the Star Nation people.
Okay.
Because the Kachina is actually really a latecomer, because before the Kachina Society came into existence, they were the true beings that look what we represent as Kachina today.
Yes.
And the reason for that was because of so many abductions and when they used to come in their form, because they would appear, and they were the ones that used to come with, they could modify the weather, they could modify plant life, animal life, and they also were organizers of the social structures, whether it be the clan system, whether it be the different society systems. And the connection that we know about, even to this day, is that there's a lot of the medicine orders, especially, that we have specialists within the so-called medical matrix. You know, we have the like in the Western world orders, you know, you get the psychiatrists, you've got the internists, you've got the chiropractors, and those type of orders were set forth in the beginning, whenever the beginning was by different people or beings from different star systems.
Yes.
Tell me, is the Zuni concept of the Kachina, the Hopi also speak of Kachina, is the same?
The one and the same.
The one and the same.
But when I started asking about these things, the grandfathers, I was bordering into sacred knowledge, because again, about what they had gone through up to that point, they had to go underground with a lot of this information. But because of my research and talking with the elders, because they trusted me for one thing, and this is when I found out the connection was starting to make sense about where these people or the beings were represented by this Kachina order system, because basically they're all the same in all the pueblos, even the ones that have disappeared, that they used to have those. And it usually around 1,000, or within the period of 1,000 to about right before Chaco collapsed, about 1400 is when they started going into, they reverted to that type of representation. Prior to that, they said that the actual beings used to come to the villages.
Really?
So there was
In physical form?
Well, they would appear.
Right, manifest.
And what was really when our teachings are, when we go through that, is that how did they used to come? And say, well, they used to come by ducks. And, that's another substitute term for what we would term today as UFOs.
Yeah, flying craft. Right.
And then until about the 1880s, when ethnologists and archaeologists and anthropologists bombarded the reservations, and they took the interpretations and they had actual written history of those things, and they talk about UFOs, especially the 1929 book on ethnology by some of the ethnologists that were there. They interpreted the things that were as common knowledge in those days, and the only way that they could do that is that they turned it into a flying craft. And up to that point, there was no such thing as airplanes or helicopters in that era on the Indian reservations.
Mm-hmm. We construe these vehicles according to our own culture.
Absolutely.
We impose, because you can't perceive something without interpreting it, and you interpret it according to your cultural reference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why different cultures at different times have construed them in different ways, but at the heart it's always the same.
It's always the
thing.
same, yes.
Yeah.
About 8-9 years ago, I had the desire to fast, to explore consciousness in the ancient way of just going without food and water for a number of days. So because of my size, I decided I needed to go for 5 days. And I would go the first 3 days with no food, no water, and then take water on the 4th and 5th day with no food. And so I did this for 7 years in a row. And on the 3rd occasion, I had my vision quest inside the Red Rock National Forest, just south of Sedona, a place called Shaman's Cave. It's a remarkable location. And on the 4th day, without food, I did have what could be termed a hallucination that I was able to navigate through, and it was lucid, and it had validity for me. I saw a Native American man, and I intuitively knew that his name was Red Feather. And I will be the first to admit that I was in an altered state of consciousness at that time, and this may well have been a vivid dream that served by my own consciousness for whatever reason, but it was something that I was able to navigate. I was able to have conversations and see this Native American man that had with him an enormous mountain lion. It was all all of these symbolic meanings, but it was an experience for me that enabled me to see that I could experience another dimension of reality by going through an initiation that Native American peoples that had done as a rite of passage by fasting, by vision questing, some by running great distances. And it offered some sort of cleansing of the toxins of the system, perhaps, but it opened what a metaphysician or a Buddhist may call the third eye. And I was able to interact with this experience, with this Red Feather, for an extended period of time. I was able to walk with him, and he took me to a certain place, and then he disappeared. And then I had an out-of-body experience that was extremely vivid, where I was able to fly over the valley and actually see things that are existing and physical that were there. People driving their cars and things of that nature. And it was a very powerful experience. And you told me, Clifford, about an experience on the Zuni reservation where on one occasion you saw a cigar-shaped UFO over part of the reservation, and you were with a group of about 10 people, but only 1 or 2 of them saw it.
Yes.
And so it occurred to me that this ties in with what Graham speaks about, that when we develop the ability to see through the third eye, then another dimensional reality is perceivable. And do you think that's what the Kachina and some of those experiences with space brothers are? That in some instances they're seen through the third eye, but in other instances in physical manifestation?
Well, like I say, there's many orders.
Yes.
That Kachina is one of them, especially in the medicine order system. where they have that type of experiences, but there's a catalyst that they have to do to get into that stage, and a lot of this is this cleansing before rituals, and the other thing too is that you have to let go of everything, and the ego especially, and you have to have a catalyst, and a lot of these are medicine herbs, which
Sacred plants.
Sacred plants that
Medicine
only
plants.
the selected few within the system know how to put them together. The younger ones that have just got initiated, they don't have that background. So you could go through an order system, and they can actually go into altered states, especially in our curing ceremonies. And there's a lot of other things that are used as part of that whole process, especially when you start talking about crystal technology.
Yes.
The clear crystals technology. And so there are a lot of different methodologies that were handed down by certain parts of the galaxy people, especially, for example, I belong to what they call the Galaxy Medicine Order, which are deities from the Milky Way galaxy.
You're a part of that?
I'm part of that.
Yes.
And the other are from different star systems. In all our religious prayer systems, we refer to them as the above people. We talk about I guess it will be the atmosphere, we call it the rock roof, for lack of a better interpretation. But that's a literal meaning in
For the physical
ancient.
plane, yes.
And then we start going into the things like for example, there's a major, there's a name for that, Orion's belt.
Yes.
It's called the one that is together. They call it together in the language, and then it goes up to the Pleiades, and that is actually a number in the ancient ritual language. It's actually a number.
The name for Pleiades has a number.
It's a number. It's 7.
Really?
Yes.
That's
And so I
fascinating.
asked a question. I said, well, what are we talking about when we're talking about the 7? He said, you remember, you're a scientist in the white man's world. Have you ever heard of Pleiades? I said, yes. But Pleiades, the 7 were not discovered until they used telescopes. He said, but we already knew about them. I said, well, who told you that? He said, young man, you have to understand, he said, that we were told that. We were given the orders and the system before they were discovered by the telescope. So you keep going up, and the last one in the series, the series is the what became known as the supernova, and that's the one that they say that the literal meaning is the star burst. So that's what it is in the supernova.
It's interesting. So I believe in the case of the Pleiades, 6 are visible to the naked eye, but the 7th is not. So they
That's
had
right.
that
So
knowledge.
they knew that knowledge.
And then also we have the whole issue of Sirius A and B, and they're a different culture. The Dogon in West Africa had the knowledge that Sirius was a binary star before anybody in the West had the technology to reveal that. And they also were given that information by beings that came down to them from above. So there's an amazing universal phenomenon here, and we would be very foolish to ignore it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
We take everything literal meanings of things because and there's also other. Now you go back into the animal system, which we're talking about that in your vision that you have this
Mountain lion, yes.
Mountain lion, and see these are also representative of the directions, and they're what we call the guardians of those beings, and they also the ones that were designated in the beginning, which is the cougar, the bear, the badger, the wolf, the eagle, and the shrew. The shrew, and it's very hard really understand what a shrew really looks like because of that portion of the world where I'm from. I think they're kind of extinct to that point, but they already know about these things.
Yes. Yes.
And what is really even more interesting is that we also have gods that are in the inner earth. In the
what may be termed hollow earth.
The hollow earth, yes.
Yes.
The inner earth. And this is where they're also making references to. So my next question used to be is that, well, what about these UFOs? And they're, in the Zuni term, they call Jahawani, which means a mist flying vehicle. I mean, not a vehicle, but a flying object. This is the best interpretation.
But did you say a mist, like it,
Yeah,
as
mist,
if it was
yeah.
smoke or a cloud?
Yes, like a cloud.
Nice idea.
So that so when they were the ones back in the days when we used to have a lot of springs, natural springs, those would be they would appear at those places, usually like an orb.
Near the springs.
Right.
Near the springs.
You know, which is interesting because, you know, in the UK, of course, they have holy springs. And, and as a natural phenomenon, when you have a charged water as a living spring, such as the one at Glastonbury and many others, there's actually a plasmic pool that moving water creates. And there is then a form of subatomic particulate that changes the anion to cation vibration to a certain degree. And I often wonder if those
I think there's certain points on the Earth's surface that do enhance vision, and I think they vision in the sense of consciousness.
Yes.
That they do have an impact upon consciousness, and that this may explain some of the mysteries surrounding that, like the stone circles in Europe, and many of which we have in England. It's often the case that people have visionary experiences in those stone circles, and there's something. I'm not sure whether it's the stone circle itself that's causing that, or whether the choice of the location to put the stone circle was because the ancients sensed some tremendous power that's operating there.
Perhaps the matrix is already there, and maybe what happens is when that, if for example, the Earth is contains a small ocean of electrical charges on its surface, and these being electrical in nature, they will flow along lines of conductivity. Perhaps ancient civilizations could flow these through certain rocks, circulate them to amplify them to a certain extent, and also to create an anti-gravity effect, and then move them along. And there was sort of an anti-gravity field of sorts that occurred within these that enhanced vision.
It's very intriguing that in the part of England where I live, near the city of Bath, around that area we have quite a lot of stone circles, some famous ones like Stonehenge and Avebury, but that also happens to be the area where you get the greatest concentration of crop circles during the summer months. Is precisely in that area that we live in, and people often also find going into a crop circle that they have a sense of connection with some other level of reality taking place. So, you know, there may be an ancient phenomenon of the Earth that is operating behind all of these mysteries. And as though in our evolution as a species, we're here on this material plane, and we have to live our lives on this material plane, and we are involved with this material plane. But it's as though we were given certain back doors that allow us to exit this plane and contact other levels of reality. And in some cases those are to do with earth energies that provide us with that boost of consciousness, and in other cases they're to do with the teacher plants, which are there, which have co-evolved with us, and which seem to have been put here for that purpose, actually.
And there has been the theory of the omniverse and the omni-earth. There are parallel dimensions of Earth that coexist at the same time, and certain points perhaps are dimensional gates and also time gates. Perhaps time is a program that we all go through at certain times, and there are places where we can experience other times. It's interesting that you mentioned the area, that part of England, because it's an extremely vivid, living area. And that is where you have so many stories of people with vision of the David Kingdom. And I often wonder if many of these powerful places are where the full spectrum of realities more tangibly exist, as if these places are like high definition television
Yeah.
compared to a regular TV of old. But it's interesting.
Makes sense.
That, is it true that the authors of Alice in Wonderland and The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings both lived in that part of England?
I'm not sure about that.
I believe that they were in Oxford.
Oxford is a little
bit
certainly
further.
Tolkien was associated with Oxford.
Yeah.
But I don't know about Lewis Carroll. But what is Oxford is a little bit further away. It's further north.
Right.
There are still crop circles in there.
Yes. Yeah.
But not
Well,
quite the
I
area, but-
wonder if you were talking about the hollow earth and the inner earth, and there
Mhm.
seems to be perhaps some sort of correlation about Alice in Wonderland going into the
and of
wormhole
course,
and,
mushrooms play a huge role in the Alice in Wonderland story. Let's not forget that.
Yes, that's a valid point. Very good point. And so there is and we'll end up here in a couple of minutes, but there is the story of the ancient Pueblo people being taken into a cave deep inside a location somewhere in the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And Graham talks about the great flood that is covered by so many myths across the
2,000
world.
traditions around the world.
Yeah.
As that being perhaps the melting of the glaciers, the melting of the ice age.
I believe that that's the most likely connection. We don't need to think that this was some sort of imaginary thing that the ancients were making up, because we know that sea level rose 400 feet. We know that there were enormous floods, and that whole areas of coastline were swallowed by the sea, and the coastline would have been the most desirable place to live in many cases in those days.
Do you feel like that perhaps it was the flood and that maybe extraterrestrials or inner Earth beings that are also perhaps of a higher dimension, a different dimension, or extraterrestrial that are living inside a different version of the Earth helped take the Zuni people, the Pueblo people inside an area for a certain amount of time to wait for the waters to recede?
Well, I think that in the Zuni chronology, the flood actually occurred after they had emerged from the Grand Canyon.
Ah,
So that in Zuni time, that it happened after they were, this is what we call the fourth world. All the Pueblo people call this the fourth world.
mhm.
And so it ties in with the rest of the world of the flood, and this is where the plumed serpent comes into play in the Pueblo world. Is that the plumed serpent was the one that arrived during the time of the Great Flood, and there's a lot of history to it within our rituals and common knowledge of all the people that are trained to teach these things. And so it's parallel with all the other flood stories throughout the whole planet.
Yes.
But so this is so if you really look at it, you study all these different ancient stories or knowledge that they have of other tribes and other indigenous groups, it becomes like it's a big puzzle, and you start putting things together, and they all fit together.
Remarkable.
And so this is what
That's what we're all doing. We're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
So I want to again thank Clifford Mahooty and Graham Hancock. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
I admire and respect
Thank
you
you.
both so much. And 2013 is certainly an interesting year. 2012 was the beginning of a new phase, and it seems like there are a lot of things happening on the Earth that are going to unfold in quite a remarkable way. So thank you both for sharing
you're very welcome.
the truth, and that is so important, and thank you for having the courage. And both of you, in certain ways, in many ways, you break out of a mold in sharing this information. There are those that don't want to share, and you experience the same thing, as do we. And so thank you all very much, and thank you for your courage.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.